Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Benjamin Cure Show on this Monday, September 1st, 2025. After an amazing opening weekend of college football, so many great teams, so many great storylines to get to, even for the teams that did not perform to par or like we thought they would. I also want to touch upon later in the show Lee Corso's historic and, dare I say, perfect ending to a career and what it means for the sport of, as a whole, and him moving on from his TV and media career. I also want to touch upon a story at the end that hits close to home in Luis Suárez and Inter Miami CF and Luis Suárez's moment after the ending of that game and the entire incident and what I think of it, because I certainly do have some thoughts. But first, let's start with Arch Manning and what I believe was the worst case scenario opening situation for any college football quarterback that there could have been. The cards could not have been stacked more against Arch Manning. The hype and the noise has gotten way too loud, and that's coming from somebody who has been a part of that hype, and so it may seem hypocritical, but at the end of the day, like, you look at him, you look at his performance, you look at how many times he truly has been put in this situation in a game, and you realize he hasn't had very many opportunities in college football, and things were just getting too loud. And the moment that I knew it was getting too loud was when Paul Feinbaum came out and said that essentially Arch Manning was the second coming of Jesus Christ, and he was the greatest college football player ever without even having a single season of starts or sample size to judge him based off of. Arch Manning was put into a no-win scenario because if he wins and he performs well, it's expected. And if he doesn't, the world is falling apart. There were so many different things leading up to this opening game between Texas and Ohio State that just rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm the first one, believe me, as someone in sports media, dare I say to a certain extent, and someone who's just a fan of college football and football in general, and a fan of the Mannings, I wanted to see Arch Manning succeed. But there were so many little things that led you to believe, man, this is not going to be all that it's cracked up to be. You're talking about an Ohio State team that is coming off of their season as the reigning defending national champions. Ben, they lost 14 starters. That is still Ohio State with one of the biggest, if not the biggest, NIL initiatives in the entire sport right now, which, make no mistake, is the reason why we are seeing such a shift in parity across the entirety of the league. We'll talk about Alabama and Kalen DeBoer in a second because obviously it is entirely related to their success, or dare I say their downfall and lack thereof success following Nick Saban's departure in an era where NIL has seemingly made itself one of the top three factors, if not the top factor in your team's fate going into a season. But we watched this Ohio State team play to their capability as one of the best rosters in college football, make no mistake, as the third overall team coming into the season. That felt like a trap right there in and of itself. You're going to rate Ohio State as the third overall team coming into the season when they're the reigning defending national champions, and you're going to rate Texas, who didn't make it to the college football playoff, who came up short last year and came up short in so many moments last year, and the writing was kind of on the wall regarding them. You made them the number one overall team heading into the season. Then you've got Paul Feinbaum saying that Arch Manning is the second coming of Jesus Christ and that he is the greatest college football player of all time without even having a singular season of starts of a sample size. And then you have all these rumors swirling from Colin Cowherd saying, oh, I'm hearing that Arch Manning's going to go back to school, and there seems to be rumblings that I wouldn't be surprised if, because of Nick Saban's relationship with Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Browns, if the Browns in 2 years say, we're drafting Arch Manning and we're bringing Nick Saban out of retirement. And then you have Jerry Jones doing exactly what we thought he was going to do in terms of selling the farm for Micah Parsons, getting 2 first-round picks back, along with a defensive tackle, and essentially the word on the street being from his own former player in Des Bryant, Jerry Jones knows exactly what he's doing. Jerry Jones wants his Herschel Walker moment. He wants to get rid of a guy in Micah Parsons to get draft capital because he thinks that next year Arch Manning's going to be in the draft, and he is willing to sell the farm for a Manning, regardless of ability. He thinks he's going to be great, but just the name in and of itself, he's not going to miss the opportunity to draft a Manning. You have literal rumors of NFL franchises before the season even starts saying, we're tanking for Arch Manning. You're going against a team that is no cakewalk in Ohio State, quite literally in Ohio State, in their territory, with 100,000 fans seemingly being against you that entire way of that game. You have Arch Manning, who really, at the end of the day, has not played as much college football as we would like to have seen. And you're putting him in a situation where he's used to coming in packages. He's used to coming in for rushes. And we've also not taken into account, and all the things that I've said, that Arch Manning is, in fact, human. He may be a Manning. He may have a historic last name. He may have a tremendous aura. He may say all the right things. He may have some of the best and hardest quotes that I've ever heard, including the red dot quote, which in the end kind of backfires and does not seem as cool as it did a few days ago in retrospect because of that result. But like a guy who everybody thought was literally a god amongst men in college football and the aura that he held. And you know what? He is a young kid, and he is someone who hasn't started very many games in college football, and he is going into his first season in college football knowing, okay, I'm going to be the guy. And it could not have come in a worse situation against the reigning defending national champions and a great coach and a defensive coordinator in Matt Patricia, who won 3 NFL Super Bowls, who bested guys like Peyton Manning and Eli Manning back in their day. And now you're going against one of the most complex coverages in all of college football because Matt Patricia is one of the best defensive minds in football, period. I don't care if he didn't have a great showing as a head coach, and I'll be the first one to say that and agree with you, but he's one of the best defensive minds in football, not the NFL and college football, period, in football, period. And he's had 8 months since February when he was hired to scheme up one of the most exotic blitz and coverage packages Arch Manning has ever seen, and maybe something that most college football quarterbacks will not see this season until they make it, if they make it, to the NFL. That's how great Matt Patricia's defense is. And by the way, he's running it with no scrubs. He's running it with some of the best athletes in college football because Ohio State, even after losing 14 starters last season, or in the offseason, you could say, has an NIL collective that feels like it's infinite, and they are able to get some of the best players in the sport via the transfer portal and via commitments. So yes, this was not the best situation for Arch Manning. I will say Arch did not set his feet as we would have liked. His footwork looks like it needs work, dare I say, and that's putting it very mildly. He did this weird sidearm mechanic a couple times where like his mechanics just looked off. He wasn't getting enough zip or velocity or just natural momentum behind the ball. Felt like he was arming it almost like it was a baseball throw. And you cannot do that when you're playing a team that is as good as Ohio State. Arch's footwork needs to get better. Arch's footwork needs work. Dare I say that Arch's mechanics need a little bit of work and refining. And Arch just needs time to calm down because clearly the nerves got to Arch Manning for arguably the first time in his entire football career. We have seen Arch Manning succeed so much that we just took it for granted at every level in middle school and high school, in the few packages that were run with him, his first season at Texas, and last year as well, and the moments when Quinn Ewers was seemingly forced out and when he wasn't going to be available, and how loud the noise got of, oh, we've got to get rid of Quinn Ewers. We've got to show him the door because we've got Arch Manning. I've heard this over the years. Sometimes you don't try to get happier than happy. Texas fans, you had a really good thing going with Quinn Ewers, and even though he didn't perform like we would have liked at times, clearly he was no scrub, and clearly Arch Manning has some work to do, and I don't think this is the end of Arch Manning's career. I think he's going to be just fine. I'm very excited for him. I'm very, I don't want to get too, glaze-worthy here, but, I wish him the best. I think he's going to be just fine. But this was not the best performance. Two things can be true. Not the best performance. And B, you got to give him time. And I think we just took for granted what a debut for a college football quarterback should look like in more ways than one. So moving on to our next story. Man, this is tough. So what feels like Rome has fallen. Alabama, FSU. FSU beat the brakes off Alabama. And for as much as I was told that Kalen DeBoer is a winner, I have yet to see it. I know that Kalen DeBoer last year steadied the ship for Alabama, led them to a 9-4 record, but at the end of the day, so many stats came out of this weekend's matchup. Kalen DeBoer now is the first head coach in Alabama in the past several years, seemingly going back to the Nick Saban era. The Alabama Crimson Tide's record of 23 straight Week 1 wins, opening weekend wins, has now been snapped. And that is both a testament to Nick Saban and the great head coach that he was, and it is also seemingly a sign of the times in Kalen DeBoer and what this Alabama program has become. And I mentioned it a few minutes ago. The NIL thing is real, and Nick Saban read the writing on the wall, and Nick Saban may not have been as successful following this NIL era going into it as he was previously. I think everybody agrees with that because the playing field was sort of leveled in that sense, but I don't think it would have been this bad for Nick Saban. And whether you believe it would have been as bad with Nick or not, the point stands when you look at Alabama and you talk about the program as a whole. It felt like watching Rome fall when I watched FSU beat the brakes off of Alabama, and I watched Kalen DeBoer get outcoached once more, and I watched a team in FSU that seemed so hungry in what was truly a full circle moment. They went 13-0. They lost their starting quarterback. They thought they'd make it into the playoff. They thought they deserved to be there. In the end, Alabama got in over them, and I still stand by saying I believe that Alabama should have gotten into the playoff over FSU because Nick Saban was a better head coach, and they were more capable, and they were a better team because they had their guys. And unfortunately, due to the worst case scenario set of circumstances, FSU lost their quarterback late in the season, and in the end, the chips were stacked against them. But watching this game felt, like I said, like a true full circle moment. FSU played hungry. They played, passionately. They were played really well, and it showed in the box score. And that feels like a real team this year that is going to probably end up competing with the Miami Hurricanes for the ACC championship. If I had to take a guess, it goes through Florida, certainly the ACC championship this year, and I believe that it goes through Coral Gables. In my opinion, I think I would give the Miami Hurricanes the edge. No bias involved in that take. I'll get into that in a second. But FSU's a real team. And Alabama, Kalen DeBoer, it just feels different. And I was told Kalen DeBoer was a winner, but you know what? It feels like he's not winning enough. And that may be unfair to him, but there were a lot of expectations on him. He led Washington State, which we did not think was a juggernaut, to a national championship for the last time in the Power Four, or not in the Power Four era, but in the 4-team playoff era. And we just expected more out of him. And then Ryan Williams, who was supposed to be this generational talent, who last year started off hot, then got cold at the end of last season, goes into this year with a lot of high expectations from many people, including myself, and has an underwhelming 5 for 30 stat line, and then goes out in the fourth quarter with concussion protocol. I'm not blaming him for his health or whatnot at all, but it just felt like this underwhelming set of circumstances for Alabama, and what is truly a changing of the tide for this team. Kalen DeBoer, I could make the argument that Kalen DeBoer inherited an empire, and it feels like this is closure for FSU, and it feels like, for Alabama, I feel like we watched the nail in the coffin with Alabama. I really do. It feels like that is the end of an empire, and I saw that edit on TikTok, that sentimental one where it was like Rome has fallen, and it felt like it, and it felt like the college football equivalent to that, watching Alabama struggle and seemingly not be the Alabama of old in that game against FSU in week 1. Moving on, though, to the Miami Hurricanes, my hometown team. My mom, I've always preempted with this. I, myself, am not a Miami Hurricane, but Mom is a graduate of the Miami Hurricanes, and I spent my entire life growing up going to the boat burning, going to their parties, going to those games, going to those tailgates, and celebrating and weeping with every win and loss growing up, including a lot of these Catholic versus convict Notre Dame games over the years, especially as I got older. And let me just tell you, a lot of people said it online. If this Miami Hurricanes team had this defense last year, they would have made it to the national championship, and dare I say they would have won it, because the only thing stopping Cam Ward from reaching ultimate success with Miami, amongst other things like coaching and dare I say Mario Cristobal not being the best X's and O's guy in the world, was that defense. And now the Miami Hurricanes have an excellent defense, a lockdown defense, a defense that can get turnovers, that plays aggressive, that doesn't make mistakes. They have an offensive line that really looks like they're humming. They have Carson Beck, who I was worried about going into the season, but let me tell you, Carson Beck proved a lot of haters wrong last night, and he showed he can still be the surgeon that he was in high school football. I attended Christopher Columbus High School, so for those of you that know me, you know all about Christopher Columbus High School, and if you're from Miami, you know about them. But they're a very good high school football program, dare I say one of the best in Florida, specifically South Florida and Miami. They played Carson Beck's team in the state championship my freshman year of high school, which would have been either 2018 or 2019, and they lost. And I remember everybody leaving that game saying Carson Beck was an absolute surgeon. Feels like we saw the resurgence of his accuracy yesterday. And although he didn't have the best moments, like the one-handed catch, the Odell Beckham Jr. lookalike in terms of aura and what that play meant for the program, and Michael Irving on the sideline losing his mind, and Ray Lewis being there, and so many great historic Canes and Devin Hester, and that stadium just being rocking in a place and time when it is infamous for Miami fans and students to not attend games and to not make their presence known. It feels like Miami is all the way back, and it feels like the Miami Hurricanes have a real opportunity and a real shot here to make some noise. I believe after that performance, Ben, it's only week 1, I don't care. I believe after that performance, that the Miami Hurricanes are going to win the ACC championship, no question. I believe it's going to ultimately come down to FSU and the Miami Hurricanes, and I don't think FSU wins that ball game because I think Carson Beck is a better quarterback, and I think overall the Miami Hurricanes have a better team in all three phases of the game, in special teams, defense, and offense, and I just believe that this Miami Hurricanes team, it feels like the program has been built the right way through the trenches, and even though it took a couple years with Mario Cristobal, and you don't have to love every aspect of who he is, we've heard the criticisms on this show, not just from myself, but from guests who have come on who are very well tapped in, that Mario Cristobal is not the best X's and O's guy, but make no mistake, he has recruited the right guys to this program, and they've built the right team through their NIL collective, and I believe the Miami Hurricanes are seemingly all the way back. They can make some noise in a college football playoff. They're going to make it to the college football playoff, and they are certainly going to win the ACC championship. I have no doubt. Moving on to Lee Corso's last day on College Game Day and his last show. It is so fitting that on his final show, Lee Corso goes 6 for 6, a perfect storybook ending for him, picking all of his former programs, his former teams, the teams that he had tiffs with over the years, and it just felt right. And one thing that I want to focus on, I want to give Lee Corso his credit because he is one of the trailblazers in sports media and in college football, and we're going to miss him dearly, and the passion that he brought every single day and how exciting he made Saturday mornings in his prime, and even now towards the end, just how much you could tell he was giving it, even though he seemingly couldn't give it what he used to give it. He was giving 110% of what he could give. I also want to give a lot of credit to Kirk Herbstreit, who seemingly felt like the perfect son a lot of times watching Lee do his thing, and the way that Kirk Herbstreit was always there to comfort Lee Corso, and the way that he was always there to remind him and walk him through his takes, and was just so compassionate towards the end. It made me so happy to see. And in a day and age where it wasn't super popular to be an older guy in the media at that age, in a way that almost became political because as well of the presidential election at the time, Lee Corso got a lot of hate towards the end, and you could see it on social media, unfortunately, that I don't believe was deserved for that kind of a role. That role is not being the president of the United States. That role is not, making decisions between life and death. That is a gentleman who has given his entire life to the sport, and Lee Corso, as a player, as a coach, as a fan, as a broadcaster, and as someone at that desk. And he deserved to go out on his own terms. And I recently read a story that is only a rumor that maybe I shouldn't even address, but reportedly that apparently there may or may not have been talks a couple years ago at ESPN about letting Lee Corso go, and Kirk Herbstreit put his foot down and said, if you guys get rid of him, I walk. And the entire crew, I've already spoken to them, is willing to do the same thing because you have to let that man walk out on his own terms. And this sense of unity between Kirk Herbstreit and Lee Corso and the stories that we've heard over the years, as well as just watching Lee go out with a bang, with all the tributes, with all the love, felt like the perfect ending to his career. So to Lee Corso, I salute you. I thank you. Lee Corso will most likely never see this clip, but know that you made college football better and you made your impact known, and we are going to dearly miss you on Saturday mornings on behalf of all college football fans out there. So with that being said, moving on to our final story of this show, Luis Suárez and Inter Miami in their League's Cup final. In the end, Seattle beat Inter Miami 3-0 in the final. They beat them in penalties. And there was a video post-match that shows Luis Suárez spitting on a member of the Seattle team. It was apparently Obed Vargas, who was, or Seattle's director of security, Gene Ramirez, was the one that he spit on. He had grabbed Obed Vargas. Two things can be true. I love Inter Miami CF, and I may be biased in saying that, but I want to preempt this. Two things can be true. Inter Miami has I will always have a great love for Inter Miami, and that is inexcusable from Luis Suárez. And that's going to require a multi-game suspension. There is precedent for 2 and 3 game suspensions for spitting on people. Luis Suárez is going to be suspended minimum 2 games, maybe even 3. There will also be a fine, I assume, put on him because that incident was captured. You can say, well, Ben, there's precedent for 2 games and maybe 3, but no more than that. This is a guy who's going to be made an example out of because of his international name and the fact that the league has never been more popular in terms of the MLS, and the fact that clip has, spitting on somebody in the MLS 10 years ago is not the same as it is today. Hundreds of millions, if not billions of views are going to rack up on those clips in a way that just didn't previously with the MLS. They are growing more than ever, and that is large credit due to Messi and Inter Miami and him bringing his friends like Busquets and guys like Luis Suarez. But that's going to require a 2-game suspension, maybe even 3, rightfully so. And Luis Suarez, that is an inexcusable act from him. And in terms of the on-the-pitch play, and once again, no secret here. For those of you who don't know, let me tell you this. Let me preempt it with this kind of context. Inter Miami holds a special place in my heart. I know many people who are in the front office of that organization, many people at the top of that organization, and Inter Miami gave me my first big-time opportunity, dare I say, or one of the first big-time opportunities in my sports media career when I was their digital host from 2020 to 2023. I was with the team for 3.5 years. I was with them pre-Messi and during the Messi era, and I learned so much in that job. It was an amazing opportunity, amazing experience. I enjoyed working with so many people there. So many of the people that worked there, really did make it a point to allow me to grow and learn on the job, which is an opportunity that I will forever be grateful for. I still keep in contact with many people there. That job put me on the map because my role made me the youngest broadcaster, the youngest host in a Major League Soccer history at any professional level within the sport for any organization. And so I have a great love for Inter Miami. I was just at one of their games recently. With that being said, I cannot help but overlook what is happening with this team, which is, I had a great mentor that told me this as a, constructive criticism when I was a part of a team when I was in high school. And if he's listening to this, he knows exactly who he is. The criticism that I heard at the time was we were a very talented team and we were competing for a team award. And it was like, hey, this is the most talented group of individuals we've ever had as a team. But this is not the best team we've ever had. I look at that team, Inter Miami CF, and I say, this is a historically great, unprecedented level of individual talent on a singular team, much more so in Major League Soccer and Inter Miami, with Lionel Messi, with Sergio Busquets, with Luis Suarez, with the countless other players on that roster. But it feels just like that, like a collection of individuals, like individual talent. And a group of individuals is not a team, and they don't play like a team, and it shows up big time. And I think I tend to believe that championship games, dare I say finals like the League's Cup, it magnifies everything good and bad about your team. It magnifies if your team is a team, or if they play like a team, or if there is cohesion, or if there's not. And it feels like there's not with this Inter Miami team. And it may be a staple of the Messi era, unfortunately. We're like, look, we're just happy to be here. We're happy to have this amazing talent. But ideally, you would like this team to be a team. And it feels like that element has been missing from them. And it feels like whenever you put expectations on them, the reason they come up short is never going to be because of talent, but it is going to be because they do not seemingly play like an elite team, even though they're an elite assembly of individuals. And sometimes that may be hard for fans to get over, and it may have a strange sound to it because we're so used to great teams being great teams, not just having great personnel. But it kind of reminds me of like the New England Patriots in football, like was never the best assembly of individual talent, but was the best team and always found a way to win. That will always exist in sports, whether it's in football, whatever the case may be, whatever team sport it may be. This Inter Miami CF team is not the best team, and therefore they will continue to come up short. And with that being said, that is all for this week's episode of the Benjamin Cure Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. NFL Week 1 starts this week. We've got a game on Thursday night, a game on Sunday night, a game on Monday night. Tonight, actually, we have UNC taking on... I actually don't know who UNC is taking on tonight, but Bill Belichick's first game as the head coach of UNC. And if Matt Patricia putting a clinic on Arch Manning is any indication, I guess we're in for a interesting season and a tremendous dark horse sleeper in UNC football this year, being head coached by none other than the historic legend in Bill Belichick. I cannot wait. Should be an amazing game. It's on ESPN, primetime, 8 p.m. I will see you all next week. Very glad to be back.